Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 631, December the 10th, 2018, Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have got a ton of very bombshell type news today, so let's get right to it. Okay, there were two articles that I'm going to be referencing right now. The first one was an article written by John Solomon, was written about a week ago, and then there's a second article that he wrote this past Thursday. Actually, late Thursday night, Friday is when most people were talking about it. If you remember, Solomon had gone on to Sean Hannity's show, and he was talking about the fact that there was a really big story coming up. And then Bush 41 died. And so that whole week, that was all pushed off. And then we finally got the second story. So let's go through the culmination of the two stories by John Solomon to get to the bottom line of what we're talking about on this particular topic regarding the rotten Reverend Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, and of course this private investigative firm that was hired to do the investigation. And it appears that was done on behalf of John Huber, according to Chuck Ross of the Daily Caller. So here we go. John Solomon first wrote an article telling us that a third-party investigative firm, MDA Analytics, was tasked by someone. We now believe that someone, according to Chuck Ross, was John Huber, to investigate the Clinton Foundation, and that MDA Analytics had attached 6,000 pages of evidence to a that was given to a prosecutor in Little Rock, Arkansas, who was running the Clinton Foundation investigation. Then Solomon follows up by revealing that the 6,000 pages from MDA Analytics include information from 3 whistleblowers. One is Dennis Kane, the individual who was raided about 2 weeks ago. And we suspect that that raid was conducted by Uncle Bob, the executioner Mueller. The other 2 individuals who are part of the 6,000 pages of information are officers of the Clinton Foundation. This comes from the second story that was the big bombshell that got pushed off because of the Bush funeral. One of them we do know, and one of them we don't know. The one we do know is the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer of the Clinton Foundation. His name is Andrew Kessel, Kessel, who is reportedly cooperating now with investigators. Kessel is apparently saying that Bill Clinton mixed his personal finances with Clinton Foundation money. Kessel is saying that Bill was warned many times by various officers of the Clinton Foundation that he was in legal jeopardy, but Clinton did not care. He ignored their advice that he was getting, and he continued his behavior. It is being reported that Mr. Kessel has told investigators that he knows where the bodies are buried. Uh-oh. So ultimately the crime that you would have here, the major crime that you would have here, would be millions of dollars of tax evasion, which is why this information was sent by this private investigative group also to the Internal Revenue Service. This information was also sent to the Internal Revenue Service by Mr. Kessel and an inside law firm, the Clinton Foundation's own law firm that Mr. Kessel hired to do a review of the things that were happening at the Clinton Foundation. He blew the whistle. The CFO was blowing the whistle on the Clinton Foundation himself. Why? Because he's the one who would be ultimately held accountable when all of this was made public or investigated. And he was covering his ass. That's basically what it boils down to. And he basically says that Clinton was just uncontrollable. That everyone would say, man, you cannot do this. This is a violation of the law. You can't keep doing this. Stop. But apparently Bill Clinton didn't care. He continued carrying out his activities as he always had done, ignoring everyone who was telling him that what he was doing was illegal. Now, another thing about Mr. Kessel is that Apparently, when these investigators originally approached him, they didn't come to him and say, hey, we're investigators looking into the Clinton Foundation, and you're, of course, the chief financial officer. That's not how it went down. These people that work for this MDA Analytics are all retired federal prosecutors, most of them from the Department of Justice. Some are investigators as well. And so now they're a private firm. They are mostly contracted by prosecutors, U.S. attorneys who are working on cases and have too heavy of a workload or need some help, or for some reason they want to go outside the system, and they will use this private firm, which is apparently does a lot of work for a lot of U.S. attorneys. And apparently what happened was these investigators pretended to be people who were interested in investing some money or making some donations to the Clinton Foundation. And so they got together with Mr. Kessel and led him to believe that they were just interested parties. He didn't know that they were private investigators working on behalf of, it appears, Mr. Huber on the Clinton Foundation investigation. And essentially, he just started talking and kept talking about, well, you know, we got a lot of problems at the Clinton Foundation, and, you know, you may want to be careful because this stuff's going on, and this stuff's going on, and this stuff's going on, and we all know what's going on. We had our own private people come in and do an audit, and they told us this. Of course, Mr. Kessel didn't know that the private firm that did the audit to cover their legal liability sent that information directly to the IRS. So this is apparently how this went down, almost kind of like a sting or what have you. But this is how Mr. Kessel got drawn in and ended up becoming what's being described as a state's witness for the prosecution. And remember, there's another high-level Clinton Foundation official or officer who is also involved in this type of whistleblowing effort or is a witness now for the state. And John Solomon is suggesting that there may be 2, 3, 4, 5 other individuals also with inside knowledge of the workings of the Clinton Foundation that are cooperating with the investigation. So Mr. Kessel reportedly, along with other senior officials at the Clinton Foundation, provided information to the IRS detailing the questionable practices of the Clintons, saying that Bill Clinton's commingling and use of business and donated funds and his personal expenses was a big problem for the foundation. And so there is a lot of smoke and there's a lot of fire going on here. And what you have to keep in mind is the Clintons have always been able to wiggle off the hook because they had power. And they would use that power to go after their political enemies. Since leaving presidential politics and engaging in Clinton Foundation activities, Hillary Clinton working as Secretary of State, Bill Clinton out there being the bag man, and Huma Abedin directing traffic, they were able to run this illegal operation, this pay-for-play operation with the Clinton Foundation, and we know about how it was involved in Uranium One and all these other things. Well, the Clintons, of course, why so many people fear them is because Hillary has made it perfectly clear if she goes down, she's taking everyone else down with her. So these are the reasons why the Clintons have always been able to wiggle off the hook. They will use any amount of leverage they have to keep themselves out of trouble, including threatening to take other people to jail with them or threatening to destroy people's lives if they try to go after the Clintons. But they've lost a lot of that political power. They no longer have it. Clinton Foundation donations are drying up. No one's really donating anymore. And a lot of these people who were involved with the Clinton Foundation knew what was going on, and they know they have criminal liability, and they're not willing to go to jail for the Clintons because they no longer fear what the Clintons can do to them. The Clintons are going to be indicted, as are other people around the Clinton Foundation, likely Huma Abedin as well. She was knowingly... she knew about Hillary Clinton's private server. Now we have the judge in the Judicial Watch suit going after Clinton, figuring out that the reason why she had a private server was to keep and hide the activities going on, that she was using her office with the Clinton Foundation as a gigantic pay-for-play operation. And the emails had they been on the government server, would have shown that. So that's why she had to have a private server, and that's why she destroyed 33,000 emails, BlackBerries, and other communication devices. This is all very well known. It's well known to a lot of people. It has been well known to a lot of people. The difference is now the Clintons no longer have the power they used to have. And I think that they are going to be served up on a silver platter. I've been saying for more than a year, well over a year, that ultimately Clinton is going to be indicted. She is going to be indicted. There's more coming about this, and we'll get to it here in a minute. Let's move on to the next topic. Lindsey Graham, appearing on Maria Bartiromo on Sunday morning, said that he will go after the FISA abuse and the other irregularities by the FBI and the DOJ during the 2016 campaign. Yes, he's been making that statement almost every day that he gets an opportunity, and he's tweeting about it as well. Will he be serious? Is he really going to follow through? We'll watch and see. Normally, I wouldn't put much stock in Lindsey Graham, but because of the Kavanaugh hearings, I think something hit a nerve with Lindsey Graham, and I think he understands the fight, and I think he understands exactly what the Democrats are trying to do to Trump. And remember, he's a Republican. Lindsey Graham's a Republican. What hurts Trump hurts Lindsey Graham and the party. So at this point, I think Lindsey Graham understands that this fight is much bigger than just a partisan political battle between Clinton and Trump or what have you. This is much bigger, much more wide-ranging. And I think that there's at least a 50-50 or better than 50-50 chance that we can trust that Lindsey Graham is going to do some poking and prodding around here. But ultimately, still, congressional committees cannot do indictments. They can refer, they can recommend, express their concern, and tell the AG that they want special counsels. But up to this point, Graham has done that. So have many other members of congressional committees. And Sessions was never willing to do that, other than to give us Huber. So we will find out if William Barr is the type of person who will launch a criminal investigation, appoint a special prosecutor into the Spygate. We will be learning that very, very soon. Bob Goodlatte was on Fox. He said that Comey answered, "I don't know," 156 times, "I don't remember," 72 times, and "I don't recall," 8 times in his hearings. He says it's disappointing and disturbing that Comey can't remember key details of the 2 most important investigations in recent history. Yes, it is. Of course, he's lying. He's lying. He has no choice. What is Comey supposed to do? Go in there and tell the truth? If he goes in there and tells the truth, he'll be indicted, for sure, on many counts. He's got his money on Uncle Bob. Now, we're going to talk about something that I don't know about many of you have heard or know about, but Tracy Beans did an interview with the Papadopouloses, George and Simona Papadopoulos. She sat down with them for about an hour-long interview. Some very, very interesting things came out. And what's best about the way that Tracy did the interview is she just let them talk and tell their story. She occasionally would ask questions, but mostly she just let the Papadopouloses tell their story. And some very interesting facts came out in this interview with Tracy Beans and the Papadopouloses. Let's go ahead and cover them, shall we? Wow, this first one's going to blow your mind. According to Simona Papadopoulos, Joseph Mifsud had dinner with the rotten Reverend Clinton and knew her quite well. She gives the backstory to this, which is that while she was working at the EU for about 6 years, she said that Mifsud was one of those guys who was always around, and that he was one of these guys that always had things cooking on various burners, trying to get some stuff going, probably trying to find a way to make some profit off of his knowing and having contacts with perceived important people at the EU and around the world. So she said he was always hobnobbing around with people at the UN, rubbing shoulders with them, trying to make acquaintances and things and such. And he would always try to put together these schemes. And she said he was one of these type of people that loved to brag about all the people he knew, all the important people that he was connected to or had conversations with or had relations with or relationships with or what have you. And Simona says that he was always around the EU, and that's why she saw him on numerous occasions, had been in meetings with him, had been at dinners with him, had been at functions with him. And she said there was a point where he was having a conversation and he was talking and he was getting all animated talking about the fact of how well he is connected with the Clinton Foundation, and that he was bragging that he doesn't belong to any other foundations or any charities or anything like that, but that he was a member of the Clinton Foundation. No one knows what that means. People know that you can be a donor to the Clinton Foundation, you can work for the Clinton Foundation, but no one's sure what he means by being a member of the Clinton Foundation. And he would expand on the fact that he knew Clinton, Hillary Clinton, probably knows Bill too. But she was speaking specifically that Misfit bragging about the fact that he knew Hillary Clinton and had dinner with Hillary Clinton, and Simona backs this up. She says, oh yeah, at least once that I know of, because the State Department had their people there at the UN, and occasionally Hillary would be hobnobbing with other people at the EU or at the UN, and that Mr. Missa would be hobnobbing along with these other people. So it's natural that he would have crossed paths with the Right Reverend Clinton. Probably would have came up and introduced himself, said, hey, I'm a donor. I donate to your foundation or what have you, and I have some ideas or whatever. And she said ultimately that she's 100% certain that Misfit is telling the truth when he said that, you know, he knows the Right Reverend Clinton and even had dinner with her somewhere. So the Right Reverend Clinton knows Misfit personally. Simona also says that she believes that she was also set up in the Papadopoulos setup, George Papadopoulos setup. She said she was put into George's orbit at the London Center, just the same way that they lured Papadopoulos to the London Center. They lured Simona to the London Center. And she says that when they sit and talk about it now, they realize that they were put together for a purpose and for a reason as part of the setup. Of course, they probably didn't think that they would fall in love and end up getting married. That probably wasn't what they were counting on. Now, they probably knew that Papadopoulos would fall in love, but they probably didn't know she would fall in love with him. She's a pretty attractive woman. So, and another thing, Simona, of course, says in the interview that she liked Trump, and that unnerved many of the people who were luring her to go to the London Center. And they said, well, gosh, then if you like Trump, then you'll probably like this guy, Papadopoulos, and you have to meet Papadopoulos. He's this really, knowledgeable energy guy that we just put in over at the London Center. He's working on the Trump campaign and energy-related matters. So we think that the two of you should get together. So we're going to make sure that you get over to the London Center and that you meet George Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos himself says that after he was arrested, that one of the agents arresting him told him, quote, this is what happens when you work for Trump. And then he goes out and lays out a series of bizarre sequence of events, stating that at first he had a lawyer, but they would not allow him to use this lawyer, and that they forced him to use two other lawyers from Chicago who told Papadopoulos the very first minute they met him that they despised Trump, that they voted for Hillary and donated to her, and they despised Trump. And so he got stuck with two anti-Trump lawyers who he says gave him very, very bad advice and allowed Uncle Bob's team to walk all over him, didn't defend him at all, and then gave him bad advice on telling him to plead guilty, which he said he had second thoughts about and now has second thoughts, and he says he never should have done it because he don't believe that he was lying. And they also told Papadopoulos when he decided that these two lawyers were not necessarily on his side and decided maybe he better go his own way, and he suggested to Uncle Bob that he really wasn't ready to plead guilty to lying, then they threatened him. They threatened him by saying that if he did not agree to the plea, that they would charge him with acting as an Israeli agent. And then Papadopoulos goes on to lay out the background And once you hear Papadopoulos lay out the background in this interview with Tracy Beans, you will understand how he got sucked into the Trump campaign. It all becomes clear now. And so just to give you the quick story, Papadopoulos was working at the Hudson Institute, which of course is a pretty conservative think tank. He was working on issues, oil and gas issues regarding Cyprus and Israel. And this was based on a new oil find in Israel that happened at that time. And this is the time period between 2011 and 2015. And so Papadopoulos was working on this project through the Hudson Institute, which involved Greece, Israel, Cyprus, and Egypt. And they were all on board for this program that he had been working on. And of course, his group from the Hudson Institute did a report which they gave to Congress. And that is how he said his career was launched. That's how he became a known person in the sphere of Washington inside politics, and that's how he got the cred as an expert on oil and energy and gas related issues in the Middle East, because he was one of the key people that brokered this deal between these countries. He was one of the key players who wrote the plan, implemented the plan, brokered the plan. And as it turns out, this plan was a plan that the Obama administration, many in the intelligence community were unhappy with. And he says this is why he was primarily targeted, was because he was part of the group that put this together, this oil and gas deal in the Middle East, which Obama's administration was opposed to. That's how he popped up on their radar screen. He says that's how he believes, and when he believes, and why he believes he was targeted. And that once they had targeted him for that, and that he did have a FISA on him. He now knows he did have a FISA on him. He was told that by journalists from, I don't think he named the paper, but I think he alleged or gives the impression it was the New York Times that told him, yeah, we've learned that you definitely had a FISA on you. So this would have been prior to even his coming into the Trump campaign. But this is how he got into the Trump campaign. It wasn't like he was this total outsider that just suddenly someone pulled in. No, he had made a name for himself based on the work he had done on these oil and gas deals. He wasn't just some young guy that really wasn't in the know. He actually is a very smart guy. Actually had been working on this deal, helped broker this deal, worked through the Hudson Institute, had a lot of contacts, and that's how he found his way into being tapped to be an energy expert to assist Trump or advise Trump on energy policy in the Middle East. And this is when Papadopoulos says that he first thought that he was being spied on. He said the establishment was very unhappy that he was going to be advising the Trump campaign on energy-related matters, and particularly pushing this plan that he says they did not like. He was going to be giving advice that they didn't want him giving to Trump on energy-related matters in the Middle East, and so they put a FISA on him and began setting him up. He said it had more to do with his energy dealings in the Middle East than anything else. That's how he thinks it started. And later, they were able to suck him in to the Trump-Russia fake story, the fake Trump-Russia story. And so he says that linking him to Russia was a cover for the surveillance on him that was illegal. They had to find a way to justify the surveillance they had done on him because of this other things he was involved in, and this worked perfectly to snare him into the Trump-Russia thing so that they could have a reason why they surveilled him. But he says that we're going to learn that the spying began before that time that we've been told, having to do with Trump-Russia. Let's get back to the issue of the Clinton Foundation, now going on a different track, this being the track that Judicial Watch is currently going down, and another reason why the Rotten Reverend Clinton is going down. We are looking at the Rotten Reverend Clinton, at the Clinton Foundation, the emails, and the emails pertain to her dodging having her stuff on a government server where it would be accessible by people wanting FOIA requests. She's violating FOIA. So the original thing, the very first thing she may be charged on criminally, will have to do with her FOIA violations, having the private server for the sole intent purpose of keeping information away from people who might do a FOIA requests. That's the first thing she's looking at. The Clinton Foundation is a much larger thing going on, and it's a totally separate deal. And then, of course, you have just the basic fact of the mishandling of classified information, which we assume is also being investigated. So, Judicial Watch and this judge, Judge Lamberth, and this other judge, who is Judge Emmett Sullivan, both these judges are all over the rotten Reverend Clinton. They are prepared to, it looks like, very close to crawling up the Clintons' asses and stretching out. So Judge Lamberth has ordered the Justice Department to enter into discovery with Judicial Watch to see if the rotten Reverend Clinton sought to evade FOIA by setting up a private server and a private email system, whether the DOJ and the State Department acted in bad faith to prevent the documents ordered by the court to be brought forward to get the answers to these questions. So this judge is going after the DOJ, the State Department, for blocking his cock-blocking his investigation and trying to get records and documents and witnesses, and he's now called them out, and that's why he's issued this order for a discovery so that they can get to the bottom of that. And this is likely going to be the first criminal indictment the rotten Reverend Clinton is going to be facing, along with others who participated in trying to help her cover this up. Also, another case currently in progress is the probe into the private meetings by Perkins Coie lawyer Michael Sussman and the FBI General Counsel James Baker. And this is the exact same judge, Judge Lamberth. If you remember, we learned that Michael Sussman, a lawyer for Perkins Coie, same company who was hired to put together the dossier, was personally briefing James Baker, FBI General Counsel, and giving him information, passing information to him about things related to the dossier, things coming probably directly from Steele. And so Judge Lamberth, working with Judicial Watch, trying to get to the bottom of that scandal and finding out exactly what Sussman was giving General Counsel of the FBI and who he was sharing that information with, and where Sussman was getting this information. Was he getting it directly from Steele? Was he getting it directly through people at the State Department? Was he getting it through someone else? This is another area that's going to be probed very deeply by this judge, who's apparently got it in for the rotten Reverend. Or maybe he just likes justice. Then we have the other case, which is being presided over by Judge Emmett Sullivan, who has ordered Clinton to answer 2 specific questions about her illegal server. Very, very important questions, because they forced the rotten Reverend Clinton to do one of 2 things: lie and be indicted for lying, or B, tell the truth and being indicted for her crimes. There's no upside for the rotten Reverend. She's not going to get out of this particular deal right here. Here are the 2 questions she must answer, and I think when you see these questions, you'll know why the rotten Reverend is toast. Question number 1. Reverend, you must describe the creation of the ClintonEmail.com system, including who decided to create the system, the date it was decided to create the system, why it was created, who set it up, and when it became operational. Uh-oh. Number 2, Reverend, during your appearance before the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Benghazi, you testified that 90 to 95% of your emails are in the state system. She's talking about the Department of State Department. And if they wanted to see them, they could certainly would be able to do so. Reverend, identify the basis for this statement, including all the facts on which you relied on the statement, and how and where you became aware of these facts, and if you were ever made aware of these facts through another person, and if so, identify the person. Uh-oh. Those are questions she doesn't want to answer. That's why she's always avoided answering them, but now the judge is leaving her no way to sliver off the hook on this deal. Another reason why the Right Reverend Clinton is soon to be indicted. Is the corporate fake news carrying any of these stories? Are they talking about any of these stories? About these judges' rulings in these court cases regarding the Clinton Foundation? Are they talking about the State Department issues with FOIA? Are they talking about any of this at MSNBC, CNN, or any of the left-wing outlets? Are they talking about it? There's a few stories here and there in the Washington Post or New York Times, but they end up on page 32B. These should be headline stories. What are their headline stories? Because they certainly aren't talking about these things. They are focused totally in the past week or so on Cohen, trying to get Trump on obstruction for ordering Cohen to pay off women that Trump may or may not have had sex with. Now here's the facts regarding Cohen. You keep hearing these Democrats come on MSNBC, CNN, and telling these viewers that Trump could be indicted. No, you cannot indict a sitting president. Now, after he's left office, you can indict him when he's back to being a private citizen. But you cannot indict a sitting president. He can only be removed from impeachment. Now, once he's been impeached, then you can indict him. That's the truth. That's the facts. But that doesn't stop these hacks who are supposedly legal experts going on MSNBC and CNN and telling all those viewers. So now you got millions of people that watch these crummy fake news stations who believe that Trump's going to be indicted tomorrow. That's why they'll tune back in tomorrow. It's all about ratings and money. That's why they sit there and tell these lies to their viewers. Now, the fact is, Cohen is being charged with campaign violations for the way that he handled the payoffs of these women. Fine. But Trump was a private citizen at the time. He wasn't a government official. He wasn't president. He was a private citizen running for president. He's allowed to pay off women. You're allowed to pay off women who you have sex with. You're allowed to. Now, the issue is, was it campaign funds? Well, Trump financed his own campaign. And he can he can spend an unlimited amount of money in his campaign. There's no limits. And he can do whatever he wants with his money. Now, are they going to try to find some borderline issue where they can say, yeah, but Cohen was managing campaign funds meant for his campaign, and that money was used to pay off these women from those campaign funds? Well, they probably could get Cohen there. Maybe they could find Cohen and 5 other people to be witnesses to say that Trump ordered Cohen to use those funds that he was putting in the campaign funds. But it was still Trump's money. And even if you could make that case, it's going to be very difficult. And you aren't going to get 2/3 of Republicans in the Senate to impeach him based on that, if anyone believes Cohen. Maybe there's other witnesses. I don't know. They can continue down this path, but ultimately it's going to end up going nowhere. It only provides more fodder for the left-wing media to keep this on the burner, because they have to keep every bit of the focus and all the attack on Trump 24/7, even if they have to do it through surrogates like Cohen or anyone else, Manafort, you name it. Doesn't matter. They have to keep the focus hard on Trump, because as soon as the focus is off Trump, all the focus will then be on the real crimes and the real criminals. That's one of the main purposes of Mueller's witch hunt, is to keep stirring the pot, keep throwing out information so that they can keep controlling the narrative. They must control the narrative, because when they lose the narrative, they lose the game. And ultimately, that is why Trump feels that the Mueller investigation must be ended before he can act. Otherwise, anything he tries to do will just be caught up in the mix, and they will just mix it all together with what Mueller's doing and try to make it look like it's a retaliatory move by Trump and his people to try to muddy the water in the Mueller investigation. And he doesn't want that. He wants a clean, clear investigation and a clean, clear exposure of the facts and the truth about Spygate. He doesn't want it mixed in with everything else where it can be muddied up and screwed up. That is why he's probably being patient, waiting for Mueller to end his investigation. Whether or not Mueller will ever end his investigation, I don't know. But maybe that's why he brought in Mr. Barr and Mr. Whitaker, to put an end to it. We don't know. We don't know anything. We can only speculate. And I do my best to do that. based on the facts that I know, not based on fairy tales, crystal balls, magical unicorns. It's just what I see is what I can understand. And I'm here sharing that with you to get to the bottom of all of it. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow. You guys have a good night. Goodbye.